Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have just an inspirational show coming right up. Our special guest today is Tisha-Morris, and she's here to talk to us about her new book, Clutter Intervention. Now, Tisha is a best-selling author, feng shui expert, and intuitive life coach. Prior to entering the healing arts, she practiced law and obtained a fine art degree in design. She's combined traditional feng shui techniques, design, aesthetics, and intuition to turn challenging spaces into supportive environments. So let's welcome to the show, Tisha.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to have you here. My goodness. When it comes to clutter and people dealing with mounds and mounds of stuff, it's so inspiring to have a book to teach people how to kind of unravel that and why we do that.
Yeah, it can be very overwhelming, and I think it's really underestimated just how overwhelming. And my book really dives into the why, so that the how actually can be pretty simple. I use the analogy of losing weight, in that we all know how to lose weight. We eat better and we exercise more, but it's the why we can't do that. And so it's the same thing with clutter. We know how to put things in a bag and take them to a donation place or sell the items or whatever, but it's the why we keep them to begin with. And so hopefully my book is really unraveling just what really is at the root of why we hold on to our stuff.
Mm-hmm. And what keeps us there. So what inspired you to, go down this path and really start investigating clutter and the whole reason people do this?
Yeah, so my first book came out in 2010, and it was called Feng Shui Your Life: The Quick Guide to Decluttering Your Home and Renewing Your Life, and it was supposed to be kind of more toward Feng Shui, and it kind of the clutter chapters seemed to get a lot of people's attention and really what resonated with people. And so every workshop I would end up doing, it would always, regardless of what the topic of the workshop was, it could be like, feng shui or the 5 elements or anything, and people wanted to talk about clutter. And I kept resisting it, honestly, because it's not necessarily this like glamorous topic. And I like I said, I kept resisting it, and I really didn't. I would always kind of sway the conversation in the workshops around to something more of like, oh, you need more metal or water in your home or whatever. And then it was in 2016. Actually, my mom passed away really unexpectedly, and I had grown up in a house that was very, very orderly, very neat. My mom was a great decorator. The house always looked great. It was actually on home tours and things like that. And so, I never saw that there was any clutter issues that I had been, that I grew up with or even in my own life. And after she passed away, my sister began to, taking care of house things, and started opening closets, and we're just really flabbergasted by just how much stuff was kind of not hidden, but it was like behind closed doors. And so I really started to understand and see clutter in a whole other way, and that it's not always about like what people think of as like hoarder situations or just a bunch of junk sitting around. These were closets that were extremely organized, labeled, color organized, and this is not someone that you would see as having a clutter issue, and yet I could just see how much, 75 years of her past, nothing had ever gotten rid of, stuffed in these closets. And so a lot of my book is really helping people let go of the past so that they can really manifest the life that they want.
Well, and what I think what you're talking about, going through your mother's home and, after she passed and just kind of seeing the stuff, I think a lot of people go through that where they're kind of a little bit surprised with the amount of stuff that becomes accumulated, and even in our own homes.
Absolutely.
I can remember a time, when, gosh, it was probably like 20 years ago. I had 5 boxes of doilies. And I am not a doily person. I don't know how I got these 5 boxes. And they were just like, they'd stay in these boxes forever. And I finally got to the point where I just called family members. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give these to Goodwill, so if you guys don't want them, they're like, send them. Send them off. But but it's interesting, the stuff that we hold on to.
It is, and there's usually always a reason why. It's fun. I love working with people with things like doilies and like these things that seem so benign, but there really is always a reason why we hold on to specific items that we hold on to. And so I'm more interested in like a few items as opposed to like a whole lot of items as far as decluttering. And of course, the book addresses both situations, because both it's the quantity and sometimes just the quality of the energy that something is holding. It could be a note, like a card from an ex, like in your nightstand, that really is actually preventing a new relationship to come in. So it's not like your room is like has all this stuff everywhere. It can be simple as just like one item.
Yeah, one thing. Well, and you touched on this a little bit, and I'd love for you to kind of expand on it. But you talked about using our home to manifest our life, the life that we want. How is that a thing? And why don't you explain a little bit about that to us? And then how can we move forward and create that life?
Yeah. So most of my work in the last 5, 6, 7 years has been working with feng shui and kind of my version of feng shui. And feng shui, there's a lot of aspects of feng shui, but one of them is using your home, your home being a kind of a template or a blueprint or a mirror of yourself. And so in feng shui, there's what's called the Boggle map. I won't get too technical, but just as a general principle, different areas of your life are areas of your home. And so you can use this tool to see, if your money corner is blocked, or your love corner has, some issues or not. And so feng shui in general has been kind of used for that for thousands of years. But where I've become most interested is actually with clutter. I found clutter, and this is actually another reason I did write the book. And working with clients, I found that decluttering is the quickest, actually not even just working with feng shui, because I've worked with many energy modalities with clients, and decluttering is the quickest, deepest, most effective way of creating change in your life. And so I always I tell people that the first step to feng shui is actually decluttering, because you have to clear out the blocks. You have to clear out the old. You have to clear out what's no longer working in order to that fresh, what we call qi in feng shui, that beneficial energy to be able to flow through. And so I've kind of gotten on this new way of looking at our home is like a giant vision board, right? Because our home is really just a second skin to our own energy, our body. It's really like it contains all of our emotions, our memories, our thoughts, everything. Our home is just the second skin beyond our physical body. And it's beaming out energy in the same way that our own aura field, our own thoughts and emotions do. And so if you think about your home as this like giant vision board, which I'm sure you're familiar with vision boards, and your guests have spoken about them. Yeah, and so it's like this virtual living vision board. And so I have people like imagine if like the contents of your home were like pasted out onto a board, like kind of like a one-dimensional map of the United States. It's like a one-dimensional map of your home. And and like even the stuff in your drawers and your closets, what is on that board that's not what you want to be manifesting? Even things just as simple as the curtains in your living room. Are they really expressive of who you are, like on an energetic level? And not that you need to do a whole home makeover, but there's aspects of, if it's, I'm keeping these because I think I should, because of, blah, blah, blah. But also the clutter in our closets, drawers, cabinets, all of that is energy on some level, and it all affects us. And I speak about the closets as kind of where our shadows lie. And so a lot of times we hide. I use the word hide because we're hiding it from ourselves because we don't want to look at it. But these are our shadows that we store away in our closets and our other storage facilities.
I'm sure you've seen a lot of shadows and a lot of closets as you've gone along.
Yeah, of my own as well. I've done all this myself over the years as well.
Well, not the skeletons, but the shadows. Yeah. Well, and so but we can make fun of it, because it really kind of is. When you look at it, you kind of whatever that thing is. It could be a coat or whatever the item is. And you look at it, you're going, gosh, I haven't really even paid attention to this. It serves no purpose. I haven't used it in like 5 years. Like, why do I still have it?
Yeah, I had this, you have no idea how much decluttering I've done for myself over the last 10. I've moved 15 times since 2008. I, at one point, sold everything I had except for what fit in my car and moved drove cross country. So I've done so much decluttering, and so in 2016, when I went back after my mom passed, and I was cleaning out some things from my childhood closet that I didn't even know I had in there. And I could not believe some of the stuff I found. And one of the things I found, I talk about this in my book, was gifts from my previous marriage that ended in 2001. These gifts from the wedding, still with with cards that had never even been opened. The gift had been opened but never had been used. And I had no idea that I was still had that or keeping it, and yet on a subconscious level I do. There was still, even though I had moved way beyond that relationship, there were still aspects of being married that I was attached to that I had not completely released. So that was a shadow of mine. But here's the thing, we can also find kind of these, not that there's positive or negative shadows, because they're really all aspects of ourselves, so there's no judgment. But sometimes we store away where we might think of those skills, the talents that we maybe they weren't approved or recognized, so we kind of stuff them away. And these sometimes can show up when we declutter, and sometimes we can find nice surprises. So I came across all these pictures from when I went on a trip to Europe in high school, and it really brought back this thrill of wanting to do more traveling to Europe, and so it was a shadow that I needed to integrate, and in fact within 6 months I was back over to Europe. So yeah, making that trip. Well, and so what happens when you come across somebody that kind of refuses, or they're kind of a little resistant to decluttering? What inspiration do you share with them? Yeah, well, most people, you're right. I mean, there is some resistance in all of us, and there's resistance and what has brought someone to, ask for help in some way, whether it's professional or a friend. And even then we can be resistant as well. And really what we're being resistant towards is actually feeling emotion. This is actually what really stops people in their tracks when they declutter. They might get on a roll and start getting rid of some clothes, or some easy stuff, and then all of a sudden they come across something and they're not even really aware of it, and all of a sudden they need to go do something else, or I'll do this later. And really what's happened is they've hit upon an item that's brought up emotion, and instead of dealing with it, moving through it, they just abandon the project altogether. And so we're really being resistant to feeling, which is a cultural epidemic. Feeling can be hard, and bringing up, maybe coming across a stash of old pictures, family or previous relationship or whatever the case is, and it's just easy to go, fold laundry sometimes. So,
yeah. Or or just like leave the house altogether and go do something else,
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And so, I think I hope to present this work and show how healing it can be. And, it's like going to therapy. It's like we don't always look forward to going to therapy, but we feel so much better afterwards. And honestly, decluttering is a lot like that. So my book, I hope, kind of opens people's eyes to really what's going on. And when you do, and I think everyone can relate, when you do let go of stuff and it really feels good. And people are like, oh, wow, I wish I'd done this sooner. And so it's a matter of just kind of getting over some of those emotional little hurdles.
Yeah, and kind of moving forward. It's interesting because when we want to hold on to things that really aren't serving a purpose and, or just kind of making the house feel like there's no room, it's something to look at and kind of, start making an assessment of like what is the main cause behind all of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what I present in, I think, chapter 2 of my book, really the root of why we get attached to things to begin with actually starts when we're about 2 years old, when we start to go through individuation, when we realize that we are separate from our toys, our ball, the red truck, or whatever the case is. And that's when possession starts to take effect. Of like, that's my truck, that's my doll. And really, we never outgrow that. And so we begin to identify with the truck, with the ball, with the whatever the case is, and our identity starts to kind of get wrapped up in these items. And it's at the root, almost 99.9% of times of when we are struggling with an item, it relates back to identity. And identity around a previous job, previous relationship, a previous story, a previous city we lived in. It's a previous identity that we haven't fully let go of or integrated into a new identity. So this happens a lot in the workplace or jobs. I work with a lot of people in career transition because that's so popular now. Mm-hmm. And keeping a lot of whether it's old manuals, even clothing, like work clothes. I was a victim to my own identity. I was first a practicing attorney and for many years before I entered the healing arts. And that last business suit that was in my closet, that took a lot to get rid of. It took years after after I stopped practicing law, and really it was my identity. What I realized when I started to and ask myself more questions, it wasn't just an identity around being an attorney. It was identity around being a being a stable, respected, like all the things that my family would relate to me being an attorney, as opposed to this woo-woo, spiritual seeker type person talking about, foreign words like feng shui. And so that's the identity actually that business suit was representing for me, that I wasn't even conscious of until I really started asking myself questions. And so that's a lot of what this book is about, helping people realize what's really going on.
Well, and a lot of times it seems like from an outside view, it could seem like, oh, it's probably caused by this or this or this, But inside, when people are dealing with this, they can't really see the forest from the trees a lot of the times. Yes.
Yeah. I have a whole chapter on common excuses, and this is exactly what you're talking about. We all have, there's these common excuses that I've heard them over and over and over and over, and you'll see them in a lot of other Clutter books. But for example, just in case, that's like always the go-to one. Just in case I might need a business suit. It's so easy to fall back on that. And yet, it's just a cover. It's a cover excuse from what I was saying of really letting go of the identity that really wasn't serving me. And the beauty of it, I guess, as we finish the story of, for example, that business suit, what happens is when we hold on to these old identities that are no longer who we want to be or who we are, when we actually let it go, then we can fully step into who we are now. like full energy. And so when I did get rid of that business suit, my phone rang twice as much that next week, because there's open energy for my new identity, which was at the time, or so as a healer, to really step in with both feet into that. And this is the case whether it's a relationship. I see this a lot of times when people move from cities. They're still like, talking about living in New York, like the heydays in New York or whatever, because we can actually get stuck in the good times just as much as we can the bad times sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and, I'm glad that you touched about, like, if we move from one place to another, people can get stuck, just with those different locations. What are some of the examples of that?
Well, I had one client who moved from New York City, which is a strong identity. Some cities have stronger identities around them, and then other cities, and New York being a very strong identity for people who live there, and get transferred to a smaller town somewhere else. And she was like, I don't know why I'm keeping these menus from the restaurants we used to do takeout from in New York. It shows up in the smallest ways. And it's I take a very compassionate approach with clutter. It's like, there's no need to beat yourself up. It's just information of, okay, I'm still identifying with where I used to live. And then you make a decision. Usually when you know the underlying reason, then it's actually almost 9 times out of 10, you'll get rid of it. But if you don't, that's okay too. That's when it's like, all right, this is still serving me in some way. I'm going to keep it, and maybe the next round I'll be ready. I am always about, I'm not a minimalist at all. I appreciate and love things. I think that's part why we're here on the physical, a physical planet, to enjoy physical things. And yet it's when there becomes too much to where you can't appreciate the things that you really do like. It's kind of my approach to it.
Well, it makes sense, because it's easy. I mean, it typically we will grow into the space that we're in. So if we have a bigger space, we end up having more things, and being able to downsize at some point is always kind of a good idea, and declutter from all of that. Absolutely.
The number one emotion that we struggle with as a culture, at least in the Western society, is feeling overwhelmed. And this is a direct correlation to the stuff that we have. In fact, I tell people that if you're feeling overwhelmed in your life, that's a telltale sign that you need to declutter. Our home is just a mirror of ourselves. Yeah, it's we stuff space, whether it's a blank wall, we have to put an armoire or a picture on it, or our calendars. Like, oh my God, there's nothing worse than an empty calendar. For those who say, oh my gosh, you think I'd love an empty calendar? Well, you try having too much time on your hands. You will go crazy.
You're like, do not, yeah. Heck, I love those empty calendar days. You kidding?
Well, one day a month, yes. But too much space, we start to hear our crazy thoughts. This is why the benefits of silent meditation, or silent retreat meditation. It's like, holy smoke! That's what I've been covering up with the TV and the radio and the
and the talking.
Yes. So we have our default is to fill up space, and so this is mirrored in our homes as well. And this is somewhat cultural. There's some cultures that they're not like that. Some of the Eastern cultures are not like that. But most of the Western cultures are. If there's any space at all, it will get filled really quickly.
Well, and so that leads me to like a question here. Often when you see people that have a lot of clutter, is there some sort of like past trauma that is associated with that?
Very, very possibly, yes. When you have a lot of stuff, it is a distraction. It actually just kind of like piggybacks on what I was just saying. It is a way to clutter up the mind so you don't hear your thoughts. And so the visual clutter in our home is mirrored by our mind. So it does cloud those things. And you're exactly right. We distract ourselves because most commonly because of traumas, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And yeah, I have a whole chapter in my book about unhealed wounds, not wounds, but wounds, and grieving, because honestly, really what decluttering is, it's grieving. It's letting go of the past. And we just have such a hard time with that in our culture, and yet it's such a normal process. You know, there should be an equal amount of inflow and outflow of stuff, experiences, emotions, and we really have a hard time of letting go of forgiving, letting go of things, letting go of and really processing the past. And it's only in our modern culture, I suppose, that even therapy is even something that we even do. In our parents' generation, it's like you just try to forget about the past, so it never really got healed. And so that's mirrored by holding on to things from the past as well through our things.
Well, it's interesting, too, because when we look at just from generation to generation, our parents and grandparents are used to having, actual paper, physical stuff, like photos, and if we're just talking about that type of clutter, and we're in such an age now where it kind of reduces a lot of that, as far as the paper aspect of it. And so have you found, like, when you're going to a home that's of a younger person or couple versus someone that's older, that there's more there, actually physically there, or that doesn't matter at all?
No, absolutely, you're right. There's, the baby boomer generation is really getting stuck in the middle of two generations of stuff. And this is, I think, partly of why clutter is such a big topic these days, because they're inheriting furnishings from the upper generation and saving stuff for their younger generation, the kids in college, of like, one day they'll need this couch or whatever. And so they have stuff coming from their upline and downline, and meanwhile they're wanting to downsize. So it's a tough predicament to be in, and like I said, I think that's a big part of why clutter is such an issue. But we are moving towards what I call moving from the third dimension, which is the physical dimension, to the fourth dimension, which is more of the mental space and the technology and the cloud. And so the younger generation is moving away from the tangible stuff and moving more into, obviously, the digital world, also experiences being more valuable than things. So we're definitely lightening our load in the physical, and yet the mental space is still something to be aware of. And I have a whole chapter in my book about digital clutter and how that's still taking up mental space in our mind. And so it is out of sight, but it's not out of mind. So it's definitely going to be kind of our next clutter crisis.
Oh, without a doubt, because it's interesting. People are so attached to their mobile devices, especially the younger generations. To be without it gets a little. They're just not used to it.
Yeah. So we're trading spaces from the physical to the mental, and our cloud is getting bigger and bigger, and
you're like, how many terabytes am I taking up this time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and so for people that are wanting to, of course, they want to pick up your book, Clutter Intervention, but they want to make, people that want to make like changes today, what are a few small tips that they can go ahead and start to implement, just change in their life?
Yeah, definitely. I always recommend starting with the easy stuff first. The easy stuff that doesn't pull the emotional triggers, and there's plenty of that in your home. And it starts to open up some breathing room in your home. It starts to open some space in your own body. Like I've been mentioning, our home is just a mirror of ourselves. And so when you're actually releasing things out of your house, it's like energy work on your body. So you will feel physical effects of like lightening in yourself. And so kind of freeing up some space, starting with easy stuff is always what I recommend. And then if you do start noticing yourself kind of abandoning the project, notice if it's something that kind of triggered you. But, I think everyone can agree it feels good to get rid of stuff when you do it. And so sometimes it's just a matter of carving out a little bit of time. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, just to kind of get some things going, and you'll start to feel better and breathe easier.
Yeah, it kind of just makes such a huge difference. And it's such a freeing experience once you get to the other side of the clutter. It's kind of like, gosh, I'm able to move through all this, or these things don't, your stuff doesn't end up owning you.
Yes. Yeah, and it's funny, so many times people find like objects that they forgot about, or even money. I've heard such the funnest stories of like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for this ring for years, and or they'll come across like money and stuff. So there's some little treasures to be found at times as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they end up going, gosh, I had no idea that, I had, money in this purse or pocket or whatever,
Yeah. It really helps us prioritize what's important for us in our life. It's like when we have so much or too much stuff, the things we really cherish kind of get watered down. And so getting rid of it's like separating the wheat from the chaff. Getting rid of the chaff allows us to appreciate the wheat that much more.
Yeah, without all that clutter and stuff. And so do you ever run into like people going, well, I've got all this stuff, but I don't know what I should do with it? And you're like, where should it go?
Yeah. So I have a whole resources in the appendix for that. I'm a big proponent of the reduce, reuse, recycle mantra that's common in our recycling era. And decluttering actually helps reduce future consumption because you start to be much more mindful about what you bring in after that. So it helps the reducing part. And in the recycling, of course, anything that can be recycled, there's a great website called earth911.org where you can put in your zip code, and anything from glasses to mattresses to old technology, electronic equipment. It'll show you and tell you where you can go recycle that stuff. And then the reuse, of course, if it's reusable, whether by a donation to Goodwill or wherever, or if it's worth enough to sell. There's so many amazing online consignment stores now. I just did one where they send you a bag and you send your stuff, and they tell you how much it's worth and send you a check or give you credit or whatever. So there's so many easy companies like that coming up, which is so great. But I will caution people, sometimes trying to sell something is a stall tactic. So be mindful that you don't fool yourself there. If it really is worth something, that's one thing, but if it's just an excuse to keep it. And I find people even like, until it's actually out of your car, you haven't gotten rid of it. I had one friend who was like, I've been driving around for weeks with this stuff in my trunk, and I just still can't seem to let it go. And I was like, all right, there's another layer here then that you need to work through. So
it just sounds like the clutter just relocated. That's all that happened.
Exactly. Exactly. The delivery step is not to be underestimated, and it's the final step. It's like the hero's journey of clutter, the final step.
Well, and my gosh, I mean, we've talked about quite a few things. What if someone goes, what, I gave away too much. I gave away stuff I didn't really want to give away. I got a little gung-ho there, and they have regrets about that. How do you deal with that? Because I'm sure that's something that probably comes up now and again.
Yeah, it doesn't come up that much, but it's actually, I've come up with that a lot. I can kind of tend to kind of go to extremes, one extreme or the other, and I've actually myself had that, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got rid of that. But you know what? It's what I've come to realize is I'm glad I did it at the same time, because it's actually almost just another just-in-case excuse, cover excuse. I actually tell this example in my book about, I think it was a pair of jeans that later I was going to go horseback riding. I was like, oh man, I wish I had that old pair of jeans to wear. And but then when I really thought about it, it's like, you know what? They weren't comfortable because they were too tight. Mm-hmm. and you know, just wearing a newer pair is fine. It's going to make the horse riding experience more enjoyable. And so it's like a lot of times we, even in hindsight, it's like we're disillusioned by really the object didn't really work that well, or we really didn't like it that well, and so we can still kind of go into excuses even sometimes after the item's gone. But you know, it's a rare thing, and I find that I'd rather, in my experiences, I'd rather give away too much than not enough, because you know, you can always find replacements for almost anything. You know, memorabilia things are you want to be a little bit more careful about if it's you know, family items or things like that. And if it doesn't feel right to give something away, then don't. You know, it can have another go around a year later or whatever. It's not like it doesn't have to be given away if there's still some feelings there.
Yeah, you really have to kind of sit with it and decide. And I mean, if it's, you know, like a family heirloom, you want to take a little time and see if that's really the right choice.
Yeah. So our emotions change around things and around situations, and a lot of times with relationships, this is the case. It's like the first 6 months or even a year or so, it might feel too fresh. And then, you know, a year, 2, 5 years later, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I still have this. And what's the big deal, you know? So you want to get to that point where it feels like the next right step, as opposed to something that's beyond your comfort zone.
Well, and I know that you do intuitive life coaching. So for people that have made the decision, went through and, you know, decluttered their home, you know, what are some of the common things that you see that they try to fill their life with afterwards? Well, you know, once you have done a good purge, intuitively or instinctively, we are more mindful about what we bring into our home, and you know, everything in your home up to this point was something from the past, unless you've just now got home from the store. Mm-hmm. And so it bears like taking inventory about the things in your home and being like almost like inventory of like, you know what, is this still me? Does this still resonate with me? Or is this just me? You know, at any moment we can change our story, or change our circumstances if it's not in alignment with what we want. And our stuff in our home is just a mirror of this. So I do, as you mentioned, do intuitive life coaching and do intuitive business coaching. Mm-hmm. And Clutter sometimes is very much of a conduit to help people work through things. But yeah, I do personal life coaching, whether it's relationship or healing work. Also business consulting, particularly for people in business transitions, just because I've had lots of experience in many transitions. So yeah, I love helping people. All the good things.
Yes.
Well, and I understand that you do like space clearing as well. So is that something that you have to be there in person to do, or is it something that you can do remotely?
Yes, space clearing. It's clearing the energy in spaces, and I can do it remotely. It's definitely, that is one thing that's definitely more effective in person. But it kind of, space clearing is an aspect of feng shui. I do distant feng shui sessions through Skype or whatever technological modalities. And so the feng shui can be really effective in distance. But the space clearing, I can do them distantly pretty effectively. It's kind of like doing energy work on someone through remote healing. It depends on what the situation is for what they're needing the space clearing for. If it's a spirit activity, I usually need to be there in person to do my ghost busting.
Wear that other hat, the Ghostbuster hat. Well,
that's right.
And just kind of, I want to kind of touch on this. So we've talked about, like, if we're doing it for ourselves, doing, just the clutter intervention for ourselves. What if we have, like, a loved one, like an aging parent or family, like a sister or brother, somebody that kind of is in that space as well? What are some ways that we can help them to kind of get through that clutter?
I think giving them a copy of my book would be perfect.
I think so too.
little stocking stuffer,
Kind of move them on the right path. And is it something that it takes like a certain mindset, like people have to be ready to go through that, or does it take a little talking?
Yeah, that's a great question, and seriously, we'll address that because it's a really good question. I see this actually mostly with couples. It comes up with couples, and every workshop I ever do, it's like it's before the 30-minute mark has hit. There's a woman raising her hand and says, "What do I do about my husband's clutter?" It's always the women blaming the men on their clutter. It's really funny. And what I have found, and I think whether it's couples or just loved ones, being the example, it really has, particularly if you live in the same house, it's easier. But if you start doing it yourself, it is like, it's contagious. It's really fun. I've seen this so many times. I sometimes do a clutter clearing live course through my website, where it's like a 9-day boot camp type thing. And so I'm hearing like stories from the trenches. And it happens so often where people are writing in saying, "Oh my gosh, my husband and my kids are now cleaning out their closet since they saw me doing mine." So I'm all about, the Gandhi, be the change you want to see in your home is what I've seen works the best. Now, if it's more of a loved one who that you don't live with, or someone that you care about, or a friend, it's like anything. It's really hard to tell people anything. They kind of have to come up with it on their own. And if they mention, "Wow, I have too much stuff and I'm not sure what to do," then you can kind of be like, "Oh, well, here's what I've done," as opposed to, "You need to get rid of your stuff." It's all about how we approach it.
No one likes to be told what to do for the most part.
Yeah.
They want to feel that it's the right time for them to make those kind of transitions. And
yeah, so I think like being your own testimony of like, "Wow, I feel so much better after I clean out my closet," and they're like, "Oh, really? I need to do that too." So
you probably get a lot of people, kind of connecting with you, not just at these events that you were talking about, but just connecting with you in general, and to tell you just how the transformation has been from beginning to end.
Yes. Yeah, and honestly, that's a big, like I said, a big reason why I wrote this book is because I've seen in working with clients just how powerful this work is, and the testimonies that come from people of just how much freer they feel, how much better they feel. There was even, I used to live in Nashville, and in 2010 there was a major flood that flooded hundreds and hundreds of, maybe thousands of homes. And a few of them ended up being my clients, or after the fact were my clients. And so many of them said, "That flood was the best thing ever for me. It completely wiped out their basements and had to completely get rid of everything in their basements." And so many of them said, "That was the best thing that ever happened to me." So it was like nature forced them to declutter. And obviously, we want to do it before nature forces us to. But it's just a testament of how much better we feel when the stuff that we're not using, that's just taking up space, is gone. So
I think most people would say, "Gosh, it's kind of weird to hear that was the best thing that ever happened," but I can understand that I've made moves from, California to Colorado, and, I kind of did the same thing. I was kind of, I went through very well, and I decluttered like no one's decluttered before.
We should have a clutter challenge show. I cluttered you.
Yeah, here I am with my car and my dog. We're right. But it was interesting just making that kind of trip. Just how freeing it is, and just what an experience it is. And I actually felt great not having a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I did the same thing. I got rid of everything, but I drove cross country, and I moved into a furnished place because I didn't have any furniture, and then I slowly, over a couple of years, started enough to where I had a one-bedroom apartment, and now I'm kind of back to normal, quite normal living amount of stuff. But it does make you so conscious about what you bring into your home. It's like, I don't want anything in my home that just isn't really, really special to me or really, really functional. And I feel like that's how we should all be, because, I say, if you're not conscious of your home, what are you conscious of? It's the only space that you have control over, maybe your car or your own office outside the home. But other than that, it is the one space that you have complete autonomy over, and if you are not conscious of that, then I guarantee you there's many areas of your life that you're being unconscious in, and so I see it as a huge tool to just start to be very, very conscious about and having awareness about everything in your life and what's important to us, what we're wanting to manifest, what we're loving, and just a lot more quality of life in doing so.
Yeah. It's interesting how something that can seem like it's so not connected is so greatly connected to how we perceive life, how we feel, how we are able to communicate, and how open we are with other people. It hits so many different spectrums of our life in general.
Yes, exactly. And that's when I began my holistic work. Started out with doing energy healing in people, and then moved it into the home, and really saw that this was a really major missing piece of the holistic living, or holistic modalities, alternative healing approaches. Our home is everything's right here under our nose, and as you make these positive changes in your home, you make positive changes in your life, whether it's finances, health, relationship, creativity, children, all of it.
Yeah, it all interweaves together and comes together. Well,
That's right.
Tisha, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think what I was saying earlier, I'd like to hit on again just really quick of, to me it's not about being a minimalist unless that's what feels good to you. We all have a different comfort level of how much stuff feels good around us. Some people do feel better with very minimal, more sparse environments, and other people feel better with more stuff around them, and that's okay. It's just knowing when it's too much, and most people know when it's too much. They feel claustrophobic, they feel foggy, they feel not clarity around their future, feel overwhelmed. All these are signs, and most people admit, man, I need to get rid of some stuff. It's not usually everyone's very keyed into that, and so not making judgment about I should be a minimalist because that's what's trending. That's not what it's about. It's about what's really important to you, and making it a priority.
And what's important in life. Well, and I know your book just was released today. My goodness, it's such a journey when your book is out and released. February 8th is a great day for a book to be released. So what, other than, your website, and why don't you share that with us, where else can our listeners find your book and purchase it? I understand it's at all major retailers.
Yes, and of course Amazon online. My website, tisha-morris.com. You can also get there from clutterintervention.com. And really from there, it's my hub. So from there, you can go anywhere with everything that I have to offer. I have 3 other books that you can purchase as well. I also teach feng shui, a certification course, and my next course starts February 12th. That's coming up, and teach people do what I do, so that we can be in more homes and spaces around the world. So that information you can get to from my website, tisha-morris.com, and lots of online courses and webinars that you can purchase for DIY. I'm all about people doing this stuff themselves as much as possible, and then when you need help, I'm calling in the troops for reinforcements. But I like to teach people to make these feng shui or decluttering, space cleaning, whatever it is, making it a lifestyle as opposed to a one-time thing where a professional comes in and waves a magic wand. I'm all about making this more of a lifestyle for people.
I know you have such great resources on your website for that, and of course your book, Clutter Intervention. I have to say I'm one of the people that would be making an appointment, because I like to get that hands-on feeling like, okay, I got this right, I can do this,
Yeah.
It's like, have I feng shuied this right? So, but that's great that you have courses coming up with that, because I think a lot of times people are like, hey, I want to get more into this and learn more about feng shui.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people take the course just for their own learning, but most people do take it to kind of the holistic professionals who want to add some more tools to the toolboxes, but also integrating these principles, and they're being more integrated into design, staging, real estate, and all kinds of facets. So I'm all about getting this information into as many hands as possible, so that our spaces just become more and more conscious and more usable, more aesthetically pleasing, just feel better, and that's going to have a direct effect on our quality of life.
It really does make such a huge difference. I mean, if everything is energy, our stuff is too, and then having that free space allows energy to really flow.
Exactly.
Oh. Well, Tisha, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show and sharing all of your great insights with us.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much, Marianne.
Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.